I'm Amitabh Revi. Our guest today, or should I say our host in Jorhat, is the Director General of Assam Rifles, Lieutenant General P.C. Nair.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you for having me over.
We're just looking at the larger picture now, the role of the Assam Rifles, the wide-ranging role, which is border management, its development as well. Could you just enlighten us on that?
See, fundamentally, our roles are threefold. One is provide the security of the borders of our country. In this incident case, the Indo-Myanmar border, as also provide a sense of security to the people living in the border areas. The second is to prevent all kinds of trans-border crimes, whether smuggling, narcotics, movement of insurgents, movement of unwanted elements, such like. And the third is, of course, a restoration of breakdown of any law and order situation, like what has just happened in Manipur. So fundamentally, these are the three roles that are legislated for us as per the Assam Rifles Act. From these come the two basic duties that we do. One is the border guarding role along the 1643 kilometers of Indo-Myanmar border. And the second is a counter-insurgency role, which we are not only doing in the northeast, also we have 2 battalions in the Kashmir Valley now.
When you were talking about, say, a situation like Manipur, which is ongoing, now that itself highlights this wide-ranging role of the Assam Rifles, right?
True. Traditionally, people always thought of us as either indulging in border guarding or counter-insurgency. This is a role which we have been addressing in small measures, but this time it was a very big, unfortunate event that happened. And thankfully, because of the domain knowledge, the ground knowledge that we have here, our troops are extremely familiar with the terrain, with the people, with the ecosystem that exists here, which is why we were able to respond as fast as we could, and B, provide this sense of security amongst the people, and that's kind of helped in getting the situation to normalcy. As we are going forward, we see things improving day by day.
General, when you say insurgency is on a downward slide, there have been some spikes, etc. But just looking at the events of late, Kolkata Sitwe port connectivity is being established. The Kaladan project was under threat at one point of time. In 2019, there was Operation Sunrise, I think. Your observations about those developments and connect them to now.
Operation Sunrise, both the Sunrise 1 and 2 were huge successes, particularly for us, the second, the Sunrise 2, because this was probably the first time when the militants got a beating in a very big way. And this may be one of the reasons why the insurgency levels have also gone down after that. Like I said earlier, in the last 8 to 10 years, the levels of insurgency violence have come down drastically. But it's not just insurgency that we have to be looking at. There are other issues also of ethnicity, of people identifying more with themselves. I see us not just looking at insurgency, but also tackling internal disturbances in a big way. When we say of insurgency levels going down, we are talking of our side in the northeast. But across in Myanmar, you are well aware that there are close to 35 major militant groups who are fighting the Myanmar army. So there, truly speaking, the violence levels haven't ebbed as much as it has here. But yes, today you have a different situation in Myanmar where there are other forces also which have risen. They're fighting the Myanmar army. What you also said about some of the factions like Arakan Army, etc., interfering in a Kaladan project, yes, that was the case. But today, somehow we've been able to overcome all that. You have the Sitwe port. At the Sitwe port, our minister, honorable minister, going very soon. So in times to come, this will not be a major hindrance. And the results will speak for themselves as we go ahead.
Just to flesh out that idea of yours now, if insurgency levels continue to look downwards, then what's the future role of the Assam Rifles?
Before looking into the future, you also need to look into what we did in the past. And let me restrict myself to what we did post-independence.
Sure.
Because we are a 188-year-old force, I'll not touch upon what we did in the World Wars, etc. But after independence, in the 62 war, cutting across whichever valleys in Arunachal in the northeast, whether you start from Tawang, come to Subansiri, Siang, Siom, or even Lohit Valley. In all these valleys, the soldiers who bore the brunt of the Chinese offensive were the Assam Rifles, because we were at the absolute front. Which means we have been with the Indian Army fighting against the Chinese since the 60s. And then, of course, insurgency, when it started in the 1955, 56, there onward, we've been fighting shoulder to shoulder with the Indian Army. So going forward tomorrow, if there is a problem on the northern borders, we will be fighting alongside as well as we did earlier also. So that's a major role which I see in future.
Just looking at some specific events, incidents, and the lessons learned, General, again now, the ambush of the 46th Battalion of Assam Rifles, and extremely horrific, with Colonel Viplav Tripathi, his wife, minor son, and I think 4 other Assam Rifles personnel who were killed. What are the lessons that have been learned since then?
It was quite an unfortunate incident, and when it happened, it came as quite a shock for all of us. But if you ask me what are the lessons, the major lesson, I think, is we can never rule out that insurgency will totally stop here, or there will not be an external hand. I surely see an external hand in this. There was no reason for such an incident to happen in the first place, given that the people who indulged in this act were surely aware of the fact that there was this lady, there is this child who's traveling with the commanding officer. They had absolutely no reason to do this. Probably to the best of my knowledge, in my long years of service, I think this is the first time that such an incident has ever happened. Though there was some statements issued by the people who indulged in this that they were not aware of this. That's surely not the case. They would have known, and they would have done. So this is one lesson, I think a major takeaway for us, is insurgency cannot be ruled out overnight. There will be some sporadic incidents like this. And I attribute this that there is somebody else who has a role to play in this.
General, again, when you talk about AFSPA and how over time it has evolved, it has been taken away from certain regions and areas, how do you see that moving on ahead, and how important or significant is its necessity?
Like you would agree, Amitabh, AFSPA by itself cannot be here endlessly. So surely its time will come when it has to be removed, and surely this cannot happen overnight. So when it was decided that AFSPA has to be taken off from certain places, it was a very conscious decision that was taken. There were a lot of soul searchings that was done, and we realized that there were places where the levels of violence had gone down very low. There was this huge confidence that the state police were showing that they could handle the situation. They didn't need us anymore. And it was a decision that has evolved by consensus, which is why the AFSPA was removed from those 16 police stations initially in Manipur and about as many in Nagaland. From then to now, nothing very major has happened in those areas. So we have this confidence that going ahead, gradually we shall be able to take this off from the other places also, as going forward when we have more and more peace and development happening in other places.
General Nair, again, like I said, really appreciate your time during, I know how busy you are and where all you need to be at this very moment. So appreciate your time, and sharing all your experience with us.
Thank you, Amitabh. Thank you so much.